Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for organizing such a conference, and for the organizers, the funders. I appreciate it a lot for the invitation, and particularly to Eva. Merci beaucoup. I will be presenting in English. I am sorry for this, but this is my first language now. Okay. So the title of my talk is the real Islam. And what does it mean to put the real Islam into practice? For me, the real Islam is a human rights and social justice context. And for me, the real Islam is seeing each other as spiritual equals. And without it, we cannot be imbued in the human rights. We cannot have a culture that is rooted in human rights. So it is therefore going to be a presentation that is going to be the application of a lot of the theology that we've heard in the last, since yesterday and today, that has been the progressive Islam, about Sharia, about fiqh, and about even the deculturalism of Islam in Muslim societies. So the work that I've been doing is how do we culturalize back the traditions of various Muslim societies and the rerouting of human rights in these societies. My presentation will be, first I will start with introducing myself. My name is Zonneveld. I started Muslims for Progressive Values to defy the narrow definition of what it means to be a Muslim. I see Islam as one of liberation theology, one that liberates us from tribalism and classism, and an Islam that has forced us into a small box. The small box is often defined by small-mindedness, hate, prejudice, superiority complex. So which Islam do you prefer? The Islam that promotes hate by the hate imams, or Islam that is one that is rooted in love and compassion? The choice by many people is an easy choice. It's not obviously the one that the authoritarian, politicians, and religious authorities would prefer you to choose. So over the years, over the 15 years of founding Muslims for Progressive Values and our activities, I found that more and more Muslim organizations, and even in Muslim societies, have wanted to partner with Muslims for Progressive Values. And it is for this reason that I created Alliance of Inclusive Muslims, which is an umbrella human rights organization of Muslim organizations, scholars of Islam, religious authorities, secular Muslims, all united in one voice, and that is for human rights for all. It was founded in 2017 in Tunisia. There we go. There is a commercial, but unfortunately I have not been able to show this for you, so you can look at it on our YouTube channel. So it is actually very difficult to be yourself as a Muslim, even in the West. So the reason I founded Muslims for Progressive Values was as a result of my personal experience. I'm a songwriter, producer for about 20 years, and then 9/11 happened. And with the relearning of Islam for myself, I decided, well, the best way for me to contribute to a different conversation about Islam, much like what this conference is trying to do, is to push back against the small, narrow-minded definition of what Islam is. And so in my own small way, I was trying to do that in the United States with producing a CD of Islamic pop songs. The content of the music was about spirituality, about women's rights, the role of women in Islam, like Khadija, for example. She was the financier of the early Muslim societies. How come we never see her as such? So, but I was not aware of what I was wading into. What I realized is that none of the Muslim organizations and retail businesses would sell the CD because I was a female singer and my voice is awrat. I use all the musical production, the musical instrumentation. That too is haram because according to them, Prophet Muhammad only had the percussion, and so therefore that is also haram. So at this point, I was like, well, I am done with you. I am creating my own community of like-minded Muslims that is egalitarian, that really allowed for freedom of expression. I will circle back on the freedom of expression, which is actually really, really key to us creating a Western Muslim culture. And I will also illustrate this with a song at the end of my presentation. So what is important is to highlight that what they are trying to do is to disconnect you with the Creator in you. They were trying to disconnect me from the God in me. God is the most creative entity. We see that is evident. And in the womb, God blew the ruh into the womb to become who we are as human beings. So we are all creative human beings. We all have that creative soul. So when they say you cannot express yourself, when they say you cannot think and express yourself, this is the way for them to disconnect you from that God in you. This goes back to the spiritual self discussion yesterday as well. So women are treated as second-class citizens, unable to think for ourselves, not allowed to have our own self-determination, even in the West. I see this a lot. We are not allowed to decide who to marry, when we want to marry, if we want to get married. I don't know about you, but when I was young, I was told, hey, you cannot laugh out loud. How many of you, raised in Muslim societies, were told that as a woman you are not allowed to laugh out loud? It's ridiculous. So it is a virtual rope against your neck, which is not much different when the Quran was talking about female infanticide. It's just more sophisticated in how they are choking us of our own basic rights. I need to be better at this. Okay, so the mission of Muslims for Progressive Values, as you can read. So why is there such a resistance to basic human rights, women's rights in particular, when we have been given these rights 1,400 years ago? So the work and advocacy we do at Muslims for Progressive Values, or MPV, and globally through AIM, is built of the foundations of progressive thinkers, philosophers, scholars of Islam, of old and new, including some at this conference. When Dr. Amina Wadud publicly led men and women in prayer in 2005, she broke the door down, paving the way for me in 2006 to do just that, and for MPV to empower all those who want to be able to do so. It doesn't matter if you're a man or woman or LGBT. I'm happy to see that the many women and men in Europe are also taking ownership of this progressive Islam. It is not just the act of leading prayer, it is actually the deeper meaning of the physical expression that we are all spiritual equals. The Quran is clear about this, but we humans don't practice that version of Islam. For us as practitioners of Islam as a way of life, the Maqasid al-Sharia is quite basic and fundamental to the work that we do. It is not good enough to speak of human rights and social justice in a simple theological and abstract manner, as just words on a paper, but in applying it to real lives in a manner that really benefits society. It is actually very easy. Everyone wants basic human rights for themselves. It is powerful, but the Qurayshis do not want us to have those human rights. One example that we use, the Maqasid, is in our work in Kenya, in how we are looking to reform the Qadi court, which is the Sharia court in Kenya, and how we've promoted a more egalitarian interpretation of Sharia law using the Maqasid al-Sharia. These are a few images of the activities that we do at Muslims for Progressive Values. Now, as much as we talk about human rights abuses that are justified in the name of religion, we therefore have to challenge these narratives. And as culture is influenced by religion, again, we need to challenge these harmful narratives. Now, example, we often hear the problems about women not having the right to go to school or the right to work outside the home. That's the hindrance of the women's self-determination. In the human rights field, the work that I do in, I see a lot of money being put into building up the infrastructure of schools and the promotion of women and girls' rights to go to school. But the problem is nothing is going to change unless the imams themselves promote the right for women and girls to go to school. So this is the kind of mindset and culture shift that needs to happen in the field, in the family unit itself. Our methodology is to flip the narrative from hate to love in the context of Islam in the framework of our work. After all, who wants to be oppressed? Everyone wants to be free, to be able to feed their children, provide schooling for them, a better future for them. It's the politicians and the religious tools who want people to believe that to be a good Muslim is to suffer and to be oppressed. To be a good Muslim is to conform to the state definition of Islam. Okay. All our activities are intended to debunk misinformation, like educating the public, and this includes an individual's spiritual ownership and the right to self-expression, identity, promoting of the right to be you. When we talk about brothers and sisters in Islam, we had this whole discussion about Ummah earlier on, then we should be able to pray side by side. And believe me, it is quite an experience to feel that bond with your brother in prayer. You rise above the physicality about this body beside you, but to really connect in a real spiritual way. It is that simple, but yet it is difficult because our Muslim societies have completely sexualized our bodies. In the name of Islam, when I hug my partners, whether they are women or men, even religious leaders, there is no sexual intent, but pure spiritual connection. It is actually really beautiful. You should try it. Okay, education. To create the ecosystem that is rooted in human rights, MPV works on many levels. In the US, in the United Nations, and globally and vertically. At the policy level, the mid-level, which includes the scholars of Islam, the religious authorities, and community leaders, and the general public and children, all are important in creating the ecosystem at each level of society because this feeds into itself. So one example of educating diplomats, for example, at the United Nations, the assumption is apostasy and blasphemy is punishable by death according to Sharia law. But this is obviously not the case because we know that apostasy and blasphemy laws have no basis in the Quran. It is a political tool that has been used to sideline critical thinking and opposition, political opposition. And I'm very happy to share that in 2018, the highest religious Moroccan authorities also came down with the same decision, and they did a fatwa on this, and that is basically that this apostasy and blasphemy laws has no punishment, earthly punishment in Islam. So I'm going to talk about the curriculum because you cannot have a culture rooted in human rights if we don't start with education. I'm going to start first with the human rights curriculum we develop in the United States for Muslims in the West, because American Muslim women now, more and more so, and also I see it here in Europe too, because we've been getting a lot of requests from Muslim women marrying non-Muslim men. And so we see a lot of mixed marriages where there's no conversion of the non-Muslim into Islam. You see a lot of families of mixed faith traditions, mixed culture. But where do they send their children? Definitely not to the mosque, because the mosque is not actually very accepting of these types of marriages. And the mosque curriculum for Islam is also very Islamic-centric and not very inclusive. So this is our way of promoting an inclusive society. 5 minutes? Oh la la, I got a long way to go. So anyway, the other, it's very simple. We use the Quran as an example of how to build an inclusive society at the children's level. And we have all these different exercises. This is a curriculum that I have co-authored with an imam in Burundi. And also, this is also inculcating the same surah, but in a different context. In this particular context, the woman servant is a Christian, and she, the woman of the house is saying to the maid, I need you to do this laundry, and I need it to be done today. And the maid, Christian maid, goes, I'm sorry, ma'am, but today's Sunday, and I want to go to church. And the woman says, the house woman says, well, no, you are working at our house. We're Muslim. You are now Muslim. And then the husband comes and says, no, this is not Islam. She has the right, as a Christian, to practice her religion. Now, this is very important, too, because when we created this cartoon, I also made sure that the women are dressed in, the print is created in the African print. And it's, again, bringing back their culture, and to say that just because you're Muslim doesn't mean that you have to wear black, brown, and beige. And it's also important to have a positive male Muslim role model as well, because as you all know, Muslim men have a very bad reputation, unfortunately. So this is one way of inculcating a positive, affirming image and breaking a lot of stereotypes. Here in the Imams for She Clubs for She is a program we work with young women where we teach them their rights to work outside the home, but it's also important to teach them critical thinking. And the Imam that we work there, we teach them critical thinking by playing the telephone game. And if you know, you whisper a phrase to the first person, and the first person whispers to number 2, number 3, number 4, and so on. And by the time you come to the last person, she calls out the phrase, and the first person calls out her phrase, and you can see that there is a huge difference between what the phrase was in the beginning and what the phrase was in the end. This is the telephone game. And the Imam says, look, we played this game in a few minutes, and you see the distortion of the message from one person to another. You can imagine the distortion of the hadith that was written 100 to 200 years after Prophet Muhammad died. I was very shocked when he said this, actually, but I was pleasantly shocked. Imams for She is our way of also inculcating the cultural changes at the religious authority. So the chaplain endorsement is something we do in the United States because this is a way for the chaplains to influence their society from within their society. And the Imams for She is a very popular program, initiative, where we work with religious leaders. We started with 0 imams in our network. Now we have 588 imams in our network. And one of their responsibility is to preach women and girls' rights every Friday prayer. And this is one of our partners. He's now the global director for Imams for She. What we have seen as a result of the 5 years of operations in Burundi, DRC, and Rwanda is the members of the community themselves, the villages themselves, have decided that they will no longer attend the mosque in their village, but they will now come to the mosque led by our Imams for She. And this tells you that the cultural mindset has changed. They no longer want to support the radical imams. The curriculum that we've developed with this imam here for Burundi, they are also using the same curriculum in the madrasas of the imams in our network. You see how this is a circular flow of one supporting the other. Then there's this, I'm going to give you an example of this sheikh who's a Shiite here from Bahrain, and sadly he is always in and out of jail for his advocacy, and he's also one of our Imams for She. I'm going to skip AIM since I've already told you about what it is as an organization. Here's a surah in the Quran. It is a very simple one that we should all live by. And as part of my ending of my program, I'm going to sing you a song, and this is a song called Prayer of Light. It is supposedly Prophet Muhammad's favorite prayer. Now, I started my presentation with the reason that I founded MPV as a right to expression, and why. It's because without our own Western expression of Islam, we will always be the other. So I go back to my classical roots combining Prophet Muhammad's favorite prayer with the classical genre. I have to go get my microphone. You may launch the audio, please.